Think carefully for a moment. Why would the development of new alliances immediately following the Second World War, which had been driven by alliances, be a cause for global concern? We know that alliances were one of the main causes that led the world into two major global conflicts that ended in millions of soldiers and civilians dead with even more injured. That leads us to a fairly obvious question. Why were the global superpowers willing to do it again? Let's take a look. In 1939, during the early stages of World War II, the Communist Soviet Union and Nazi Germany signed a secret non-aggression pact, or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty. This treaty guaranteed that neither power would declare war against the other, ally themselves with an enemy of the other, and, if the situation allowed, the two powers would split certain territories in Eastern Europe between the two of them. Even with some minor territorial violations along the way, the treaty was going well for the first 2 years of the conflict. That is until the Nazis launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, invading the Soviet Union. With the invasion, Stalin quickly swung his allegiance from Germany to the Allied powers, making him a new friend of the capitalist United States. In the end, the Nazis were defeated, but Western and Central Europe found themselves destroyed and vulnerable again, thus leaving the door open for the powerful and mostly intact United States and Soviet Union to usher in the new age as global superpowers, pitted against one another ideologically, technologically, and politically. Without a common enemy to fight against, the Soviet Union and the United States quickly pivoted from allies to top enemies. In that pivot, they recognized the potential in front of them. In order to help solidify their place as the single global superpower over the other, they must spread their economic and political influence in the vulnerable post-world Europe. The United States, terrified of the spread of communism, began by offering all countries affected by World War II financial aid in the form of the Marshall Plan in 1948. The Marshall Plan offered billions of dollars in aid to countries in order to help them rebuild, promote economic growth, and arguably the most important focus to the United States at the time, to stop the spread of communism. The Soviet Union was offered to participate in this plan, but adamantly refused when their counter-demands were not met by the United States. The Soviet Union then pressured the Eastern Bloc countries to deny all American and other foreign aid. The pressure worked, intensifying the divide between the two countries. With the nuclear arms race that had begun immediately following the United States' use of the atomic bomb in Japan, plus the Soviet rejection of the Marshall Plan, along with the Berlin blockade, the world was clearly realigning into two camps. Communist East, led by the Soviet Union, and capitalist or democratic West, led by the United States. Thus, after what was deemed in the United States as Soviet aggression, the United States created and joined its first ever peacetime military alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, in 1949. This alliance included Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and the United States, all in solidarity against the Soviet expansion and aggression. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the United States perceived the North Korean attack on South Korea as a Moscow-backed communist attack. They rallied their NATO troops and helped support the Southern forces. Shortly thereafter, fighting intensified in Korea, and NATO accepted new members such as Turkey, Greece, and then Western Germany, bolstering the United States' support and influence in Europe and parts of the Middle East. With Western Germany being added to NATO in 1952, the Soviet Union was upset. They responded by creating their own military alliance, the Warsaw Treaty Organization, or the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was a direct response to the United States' active growth and utilization of NATO. The Warsaw Pact initially included Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and the Soviet Union. It was designed to bolster military support against the United States and their attempts at global economic and political dominance. While these alliances were alarming to those who had seen the entirety of both world wars, the reality was that these new alliances ended up supporting what will be known as proxy wars, or indirect conflicts between the United States and the Soviet Union. The United States and the Soviets would send troops to a side of a conflict that existed within another country rather than directly fighting themselves. Some examples of this are the Korean War, the Greek Civil War, the Vietnam War, and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. All of these wars would be indirectly fought by the United States and the Soviet Union through their NATO and Warsaw troops. NATO and the Warsaw Pact helped to solidify and intensify the growing divide between the United States and the Soviet Union, and largely over the West and the East within the Cold War. As we continue to study the Cold War, you will see the roles that these alliances play in sometimes intensifying conflict and sometimes de-escalating it. Stay tuned!